guys, it's Anastasia again, and today I wanted to talk about something that I think is near and dear to all of us, whether we think about it or not. I remember one weekend during my first semester of college when my sister came to visit me. We were strolling down campus, and if there's one thing that city people, and especially city college students, don't have a concept of, it is strolling. Whenever you see someone walking slow, you pretty much know it's only a matter of time before they get bombarded with flyers and the like. So of course, the one time that I was walking slow because of my sister, we get stopped by several students. I don't remember what they wanted exactly, but I do remember that they asked me a series of questions, the first of which caught me completely off guard. What is the meaning of life? At that point, it had seemed to me like one of those cliched big questions that everybody asks, but nobody really has the answer to. So I sort of just laughed it off and said something like, I'm still figuring that out. Fast forward a few years and you'll find me reading an interview with Paul Banks, the lyricist and vocalist of one of my favorite bands, Interpol. We're only here for a short while and our existence has no meaning. That's a direct quote from the interview. When I first read that, I found it so jarring, especially coming from one of my idols. But today, I agree with Paul Banks, and I wanted to take this video to explain why. I'd love to hear how you would answer this question and whether you agree or disagree with my conclusion. I want to say for as long as I can remember, but that isn't necessarily true, since just after high school is probably more accurate. It was around that time that I think I truly began to appreciate beauty. And the beauty that I'm referring to for this video isn't surface or aesthetic beauty, like when you see someone and find them attractive, or appreciate the sunrise or how the fresh snow reflects in blue, but rather the beauty in connections between things. Those parallels that emerge when you see one thing that ties perfectly into something you were just thinking, that in turn reminds you of something you heard 2 days prior. On so many occasions of just walking after class, I would become so utterly overwhelmed by this rapid succession of thoughts that made me aware of just how interconnected our world is. It wasn't too long after that that I first read Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and there was one passage in particular that became really important to me. Early in the novel that Teresa clutched under her arm when she went to visit Tomas, Anna meets Vronsky in curious circumstances. They are at the railway station when someone is run over by a train. At the end of the novel, Anna throws herself under a train. This symmetrical composition, the same motif appears at the beginning and at the end, may seem quite novelistic to you, and I am willing to agree, but only on condition that you refrain from reading such notions as fictive, fabricated, and untrue to life into the word novelistic. Because human lives are composed in precisely such a fashion. They are composed like music. Guided by his sense of beauty, an individual transforms a fortuitous occurrence, Beethoven's music, Death Under a Train, into a motif, which then assumes a permanent place in the composition of the individual's life. Anna could have chosen another way to take her life, but the motif of death and the railway station, unforgettably bound to the birth of love, enticed her in her hour of despair with its dark beauty. Without realizing it, the individual composes his life according to the laws of beauty, even in times of greatest distress. It is wrong, then, to chide the novel for being fascinated by mysterious coincidences like the meeting of Anna, Vronsky, the railway station, and death, or the meeting of Beethoven, Tomas, Teresa, and the cognac. But it is right to chide man for being blind to such coincidences in his daily life, for he thereby deprives his life of a dimension of beauty. So what I think Kundera is saying is that novelistic aspects such as motifs or themes are not crafted for the sake of a novel, but rather are borrowed from real life, which actually makes them quite realistic. And so what made this passage so life-changing for me was that it marked a shift from me thinking, wow, life is so beautiful. We're so lucky if we find or witness these connections at the right time, to, wow, our minds are beautiful. So about a year ago, I decided to explore this idea further via a design project. To test out this idea of motifs being present in our lives, I turned to the only example I have available to me, which is my own life. So while this mind map reflects my experiences, I want to present it as just one example of an experiment that can be done using influences from each of your lives. Each dot in this map corresponds to a thought, memory, image, quote, poem, or idea. I went about making it in an organic way so that the form you see, this crazy mess of my virtual mind, is the result of no planning, just jotting down thoughts in whatever space happened to be closest to my mouse while the thought was still fresh. I knew that attempting to create a mind map that was true and free from personal bias was doomed from the start, because anything I put down had already been subjected to a filtering process. By choosing one memory, I was eliminating 1,000 others like it. Yet I did my best to trust that my subconscious had its reasons for those influences that did come to mind. I began by plotting down one thing that was playing a big influence on me at the moment, and then wrote down the first memory or influential tidbit that came to mind, and so on and so forth. Once a particular big theme or motif became apparent, I would make a label to which I would then trace all corresponding lines so that you could visualize the crossover between my memories and the motifs that emerged. Because no experience or stream of thought exists in isolation from all others that comprise an individual consciousness, each idea acts upon and is acted upon by myriad others at any point in time. Though I faced many constraints and limitations while making this project, which resulted in a very imperfect piece, the process of making it blew my mind. To see in early memories the origins of an aesthetic or way of thinking, even my coping mechanism, to have before me proof that seemingly unrelated things are actually interconnected in our minds, was just really, really cool. We all have our own unique stories, and crafting that story in a way that people can digest requires a push and pull process of choosing what to include and what to leave out. And so it became that interaction with this project transforms it into an alternative storytelling experience. The same way that if you were to replicate this experiment, you would begin to spot patterns and motifs in your life, and the collective narrative spun using your memories and those little things you found important enough to jot down would, little by little, craft your story. By the way, if this intrigues you to create your own mind map, whether it's drawn on paper or however you want to go about it, please share what you thought of the experience and tweet me pictures. This is the Paul Banks quote in full. We're only here for a short while, and our existence has no meaning. So we have to create a meaning, and in my case, it's creating things. Completely useless things that don't help mankind in any way whatsoever, but they do happen to justify my existence. So if there's anything that this exploration did was validate that it is essentially our minds that create the beauty that we see. One of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes is that creativity is just connecting things. And I think it may have been Helena Bonham Carter who said that life is art. And I agree, because if phone. Excuse me. Thank you. And I agree, because those moments that we all experience where we see beauty and feel compelled to share it with someone, those moments drive us to create. Even if you aren't an artist or a creator and have yet to discover a means of expression, you still experienced that beauty firsthand. It still happened. That's probably the most cheesy way you can put it, that our minds are artists, but I mean, I think it's true, you know? I just find it really inspiring and empowering to recognize our minds as magic, because it converts us from a passive state of just hoping and waiting to be in the right place when inspiration strikes, to an active state where the power is put back into our hands. So I hope I was able to transfer this sense of inspiration and empowerment to you guys through this video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to get a discussion going in the comments of whether you agree or disagree. What do you think the meaning of life is? Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week.